Despite Pompeo and Clinton's agreement on the war in Ukraine, I do think it's helpful for us to hear other perspectives because this is a complicated issue. So as it relates to Ukraine, can you describe your viewpoint on the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, which is different from what we heard last night?
Yeah, I mean, I think the American people support the Ukraine war for all the right reasons because, Abraham Lincoln said we are a great nation because we're a good nation, and because the American people are compassionate, they support this war generally because we were told that it was a humanitarian mission. My son Connor, who's 26 years old, left law school without notifying me, incidentally, and went to the Ukraine and joined the Foreign Legion and fought with a Special Forces unit in the Kharkiv offensive as a machine gunner and risked his life because of his compassion for the people, because of his indignation about an illegal invasion by Vladimir Putin. President Biden recently indicated that the reason that we're in Ukraine is regime change for Vladimir Putin. His Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, said in April of 2022 that our reason for being in Ukraine is to exhaust the Russian military and to degrade its capacity to fight anywhere else in the world. If this is actually a war of attrition, which they're describing, it is the opposite of a humanitarian mission. The indicators are that 350,000 Ukrainian kids have died on the front lines in this war. 14,000 civilians have died. There's 60% unemployment. This country will never recover from this. And what we appear to have done is trap the Ukraine in a proxy war between two great powers, and are feeding the flower of Ukrainian youth into an abattoir of death to achieve a geopolitical mission, and that is wrong.
It's not without historical. It's not without historical precedent. This reminds me exactly of what we did in Afghanistan against the Soviets in the 80s and destroyed that country. And you see what the remnants are of that with the Taliban taking over. So sometimes these things can have unintended consequences, and we've seen that before, and as recently as Syria as well, when we did a similar thing. The retort, of course, is that if you don't do this, you will empower Putin. Do you want to take an opportunity to respond to that?
For many, many years, we have been provoking the Russians, and this isn't me saying it, it's just Robert Kennedy. It's George Kennan, who is the father of U.S. foreign policy and the containment. It's Bill Perry, who threatened to resign, who was President Clinton's Secretary of Defense, who threatened to resign in 1998 because of the expansion of NATO to Russia's borders. We told the Russians in 1991 and 1992 repeatedly and in writing, although not in a signed treaty, that if they removed the 400 troops from Germany and allowed Germany to reunite under NATO, that we would not move NATO 1 inch to the east. We've since then moved it 1,000 miles to the east and 14 countries. Not only that, but we have put Aegis missile systems which can launch nuclear missiles in Romania and Poland, right on the Russian border. When the Russians moved nuclear missile sites into Cuba in 1962, which I remember well, we were in the process of moving to these underground bunkers before my father stopped us. But my uncle would have been forced, if they hadn't removed them, would have been forced to invade Cuba. My uncle always said, you have to put yourself in your adversary's shoes and understand what their point of view of the world is. In 2014, we helped we spent $5 billion to overthrow Viktor Yanukovych, who was the democratically elected president of Ukraine. So we overthrew him. We then put in place a government which we handpicked 2 months before. And the first thing that new government did was to pass a series of repressive laws about the Donbass, and then to attack them violently, killing 14,000 over the intervening years. This war did not begin in February 2022. It began in February of 2014.